BQML stands for BigQuery Machine Learning. Okay, so I'm going to give a brief introduction on what BigQuery is. BigQuery is a platform as a service multi-cloud data warehouse. Platform as a service means that the cloud provides you with the building blocks and then you develop your software. Okay? Okay. It's basically a serverless cloud service that helps you manage and analyze your data with built-in features. Okay, and one of those features is machine learning. Now, BigQuery basically allows organizations and businesses to use SQL queries to answer some answers, like any questions that they have for their organization. Usually, they ask things related to their customers, like what are my customers' purchases, what are their transactions, and such. I apologize if you guys hear a meowing sound at the back. It's my cat, so please bear with me. Okay, now let's see what's happening here. Oh, I need to join, one sec. Let me join to start the lab. Now, I'm not going to press on the start lab just so that I don't, I'm not limited to the 45 minutes. I'm going to explain it from outside. Okay, one sec. This is weird. I was already logged in. I don't know why they're not letting me. Okay, there it is. Okay. Okay, everyone understands what, by the way, I can't see your questions, or like if you guys do ask, I'm not sure. Can someone like keep an eye on that for me? Because like I'm not going to be able to see your questions. Okay, let's get started. So setting up the lab, I'm not going to go through it. I'm sure all of you know how to like log in with your username, your password and such. Okay, so we'll skip through all these instructions. Okay, you're going to go to BigQuery. Like we said, this is what this is about, BigQuery machine learning. Again, it's easy to lose focus when I'm explaining the code, so keep in mind what we're talking about here is answering organizations and businesses' questions, okay, using SQL queries. Now, what we're first going to do is create a data set, okay? Your data set ID. Now, this is amongst the instructions. You're going to be able to see it while you're doing it. It's one of the instructions. You create a data set. Okay, so just follow these. Your data set ID is the name of your data set, okay? Just so that you can call it anything. Like I just called it Rima or whatever, okay? Oh, and for anyone who doesn't know, whenever you complete a task, press on this so that you make sure that so that it checks your progress, like it sees if you completed it or not. If yes, you'll get a tick. Now, first thing we're going to do is create the model, then we're going to evaluate it, then we're going to implement it, okay? Now, I'm going to try my best to explain the code as best as possible because I don't want you guys to just copy-paste blindly. Anyone can do that, okay? So first line here, we're basically creating our model. This is the name of our model. Now, this is the name of the data set, and this is the name of the model that it's in, okay? Second line is just giving you options to choose what model type you want. Now, this is the important part. This is where the SQL kind of comes in, okay? Now, what does this mean? This basically means that you are selecting from a table called this green line, BigQuery, public data, so on, okay? This is the name of your table. You're selecting from it 5 columns. How did we know that it's 5 columns? Because you see here that we have 5 lines. Okay, so we have, imagine a table and you have 5 columns, okay? Now, I'm going to try my best to explain every code as much as I can. The first column is basically saying that if the total transactions made by the customer is null, meaning it's empty, there's no transactions made, then we're going to assign the value as 0, okay? And if it's not null, we'll assign it as 1 transaction made, okay? The second line here says that if the device's operating system, let me explain to you guys what an operating system is. In technical terms, an operating system is something like Windows, Android, iOS, Linux. These are all operating systems. So if your device's operating system is empty, if it's null, they're just going to put it as empty. So if like your device doesn't have an operating system assigned, null, then they're not going to put anything for the operating system. It's going to be left empty. If it's Windows, they're going to put Windows. If it's iOS, they're going to put iOS and such, okay? Here, this is a simple line. They're just saying that like if your device, for example, is your mobile, we're going to call it is mobile. That's how it's going to be displayed. Let me explain to you guys what the as here is. This here, the word after the as, is the name of the column. It's the heading of the column. So like the first column, what's the heading of it? Label. The second column, what's the heading of it? OS, which stands for operating system. So in SQL, when we say as something, it's like we're saying, oh, like we're going to display the name, the title of this column as label, as OS, as country, as page views, and such. Okay? Now, I want to go to another part of the SQL here, which is this one here, where. So when we say where, we're basically looking, it's like you're asking the question where. So you're looking for a value, okay? So what this code is basically saying here that if the value of table suffix, like the value of that cell, the value of that column, is between those two numbers, by the way, you guys can see me highlighting my code as I speak, right? I just want to make sure that you guys can see that.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So where this code here, it looks for the value of table suffix, okay? If it's between these two numbers, these two green numbers you see here, it's going to display it up onto the screen. It's going to get it for you, basically. And if it's not going to get it for you. That's what the code basically means, okay? And lastly, the limit here, this is a limit on the number of rows you have. So as you can see, what's the maximum number of rows can we have in this table? 100,000, okay? Because of course you can't like print out an infinite, number of rows, so you always need to put a limit. Okay, so this is a brief explanation of the code, just so that you don't, copy paste. I try to do it to the best of my ability. Now, we're going to go to the second part. So we created the model, you're done with the model. We're going to go to the second part, which is evaluating the model. I'm not going to go in detail into the code because it's the exact same. So again, you select from, this is the name of the table. It's the exact same code, but I want to tell you what evaluating the model is about. So in evaluating the model, basically what this code will do is that it will return some attributes that give details about the data set that you created. So remember, we created a data set, we created a model. This is going to give details about this data. Like for example, the average, the median, the mean absolute error, and such. These are very mathematical technical terms. If you want to know more about them, just look into, they tell you here, please consult the machine learning glossary if you want to understand each and every single one of these terms, okay? And now, the most important part we have, and don't forget to check your task whenever you're done, okay? The most important part is, of course, the implementation itself, okay? So this is where we use the model that you created. Now, this model here, so the first task that they gave you is to predict purchases per country. So remember the context of the lab that we're doing. It's as if you're an organization and you're asking questions about your customers' transactions via your app or whatever device they're using, whether it's a laptop or phone. So I'm going to read this part here so you guys kind of get an idea of what we're doing. With this query, you will try to predict the number of transactions made by visitors of each country, sort the results, and select the top 10 countries by purchases. So here, we're separating the transactions based on country, where you're residing, okay? So basically what we're doing is, you see this line here, we're grouping them by country. Again, I'm not going to go into every line because they're the same as before, but I'll go into the lines that are specific to now implementing the model. So as you can see here, we're grouping them by country. So for example, all purchases made in the UAE will be put under the UAE in the table. All purchases made in the US will be put under US, all purchases made in UK, so on, okay? After you group them by country, we're going to order the total predicted purchases in descending order. DESC means descending. If anyone doesn't know what descending is, it basically means from big to small. So like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, so on. Okay? What's the limit to the number of rows here in this code? 10. So what does that mean? You're going to have 10 countries. Okay? That's the maximum number of rows you can have. In this table, you can tell from, so how many columns are we going to have in this table? If anyone can like open the mic to answer me. So how many columns? Remember, the number of columns is the number of lines under the word select. So how many would we have? Okay, since I can't see the chat, I'm assuming you guys are obviously know. It's basically two. We have two columns. We have a column called country, and the other column, which gets the sum of the predicted label, is going to be displayed as total predicted purchases. So remember what we said in SQL, whenever you see as, we're basically saying, oh, it's going to be displayed as this title, total predicted purchases. And for a better view, here's what it looks like. Here's the country, and here's the total predicted purchases. Okay, and as you can see, it's in descending order, and it's separated by country. So for example, in the US, there were 215 purchases. In Canada, there were 6, Taiwan, 6, so on. Okay, and this is how organizations can use SQL with BigQuery and integrate it into machine learning by learning how their customers' transactions are being made, predicting their customers' purchases, transactions, and such. Another example, I'm not going to go into it, but just so you guys know, you can also, for example, predict purchases per user. In other words, per visitor ID. So if you see here, it's the exact same code. The only difference is that now we're not grouping them by country, we're grouping them by full visitor ID. And everything else is the same. So the two columns are going to be full visitor ID and total predicted purchases. And here's an example below. So total predicted purchases, and here's full visitor ID. Full visitor ID is you, like you're the customer, the user. So this is your ID. So like this person purchased 4, purchases. This person went with 2, and so on. And this is it. After you're done with these, now what I was aiming for this presentation is to explain the code as much as possible. I know that a lot of us in the session didn't take SQL. A lot of people aren't familiar with it. So I try to explain to the best of my ability. And then again, you can always copy paste. And I know that most people do that, but it's always good to have at least an understanding of what the question is asking. And that's it. After you're done, you can just press on check my progress. And obviously don't forget to put start lab. Again, I didn't press on start lab because I didn't want to be limited to the 45 minutes. And here, after you guys finish from the codes and such, test your understanding here. So this is a question about BigQuery. It's like the introduction I gave at the beginning. And here, you can just test, you can just guess your answers and just see what you get. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Any questions? Wait, because I can't really see chat or anything. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to continue from here, if someone else is supposed to take over. Okay, do you guys have any questions? Can you let me know if I did a good job, if you understood the general idea of what BigQuery is? So again, BigQuery is usually used, or in this lab, we're basically talking about how organizations, they use SQL, they ask BigQuery questions about their customers' purchases, whether it's an app or anything. Okay, and I think that's it.
Hello everyone. So to start the lab, we press here, for those who are not familiar with Quick Labs. Then you use a subscription. Then open Google Console. Let's drag it to another window. The username, you have to copy this, but it's already copied here, so you just need to copy the password. Next. Put the password. Next. You need to go to the top left corner and search for BigQuery, which is over here. Press it. Then it will navigate you to this page, which we will work on. So after you log in your account and do everything, you need to go scroll down here. You have this link, open it, and it will navigate you to this page, which is what we need. Now we will start with the coding, which we will gonna paste it over here. So let's see. We have this code, which what does it do? At first, create 2 new columns from the dataset that we already imported from that link. The first column is visitors, and how does it make it? It gets all the full visitor IDs, but as you know, there is duplication because maybe one of the visitors visit the website more than one time or something. So therefore, you need to use the keyword distinct to limit to the doesn't like give a doesn't allow the duplication. And then you have and it name it as total visitor. Then also you have the other column, which is purchase, and it counted the same as full visitor, but distinct, the same thing. But it limits the like total transaction is not null. Like here it allows if it's null or it's not, but here it should be like it should have a value. Therefore, it would count how many purchases we had, or like how many people buying. Therefore, and at the end, after we create these two new columns, we will select total visitors, which is this one we created here. Then we will select total purchase, which we created here. Then we divide both of them to get the ratio between them, and we name them as conversion rate. And it specify which tables did it get from. Therefore, we will run the code. Let's wait for it. See, so we have 741,000 users and 20,000 of them buying. So the ratio is 0.02, which is very low. So next we have this code. What does this code do? It gets for us the product name and the product category, and it grouped them by also the product name and the product category. How did we know that? Because it specifies here 1 and 2, which means the first two columns I specified, I need the grouping to happen depending on it. Then it sum up all the product quantity and it called them this. Then again it sum up everything, but each time it finds something it divided by 100,000, and the rounding is 2 digits, and this is which is the revenue. Then you get each product, since you said summation, therefore you're gonna get only like one row. For each row you get one category, not like the product name. Now we have this code, which will tell us how many user, like after they came back the next time they put, and how many user didn't. So let's run it. So here it's like it says count if, which means like if the total transaction is greater than 0, count this row. If it's not, and it needs to be the total new visitor is null, then it does this and count them all if they apply to this condition. And then you have this whole if statement, which is that if the counting is greater than 0, which means like there is people, then consider it as 1. If it's not greater than 0, which means like it's 0, then just leave it as it is, which is 0, and it will name it as will buy on return visit. Therefore, now if you can see here, we have 729,000 users who will buy on return, and we have 11,000 or like almost 12,000 user who does, which means like the number 1 is yes, number 0 is no. Now we will use two other attributes, which is bounces and time on site. Bounces, which mean like how many if he immediately left the website, and time on the site is how long did he spend time on the website. And we will only get the first 10 since we limited to 10. So here the result shows us like will he buy on return, depending on the bounces and time on site. So if we're gonna use a neural network or something now, we're gonna have these as the input, bounces and time on site, and the output would be will they buy or not. And this is called binary classification. So now we will create a BigQuery dataset to store for us the model. How are we gonna go do that? We will press this, create dataset. Let's name it as what they did, e-commerce. Enable table expiration, okay. So create dataset. Now, as I said before, we have there's two type of module, which is the linear one, when you have, like, let's say for example from 0 to 1 the output 0.2, 0.3 is acceptable, you're gonna use the linear regression. But if you need something like classification, if it is true or false, yes or no, then you would use logistics regression, which the output is either 0 or 1, which means like no, yes, or the opposite way, whatever you want. So here we're gonna create the model and we will label it. This is the whole work here is the same as the previous task, which will be uploaded previously than this video. So if you have an idea, if have any question, you can go check that video or you can come and ask us. Here we're specifying the model type and the labels. Yeah, so on it. As you can see now, it's creating the model for us, so we have to wait. So after the model is ready, now we can check our progress if it's right. Yes, it is. Let's check. We have our classification model, and now we need to check the comparing rock, which is this curve shows you if like the true positive rate comparing to the false positive rate, if it's good or not or bad. How we will do it, we have this command which can check for us. In this case, the condition is depending on the rock AUSC, which does some mathematical calculation to check if the work is right. Let's check our work if it's good. It's decent since it's 0.72, but how could we enhance it, which is what we need now. To enhance our work, we will use this. So over here, what's the enhancement we did? We will add a couple of attributes, which is how far the visitor got in the checkout, where the visitor came from, and device category, if he's using mobile, tablet, desktop, and the geographical information, which means like where he is from. Those could affect if the user gonna buy or not. Therefore, we will add them to enhance the model we are creating. Before, we was only checking by using the bounces and the timeout. Right now, we added those four to help on checking. And yeah, we are recreating the model again, because as you can see here, it's either create or replace, which means like if it exists, replace it with this. If it doesn't exist, then create it. So the execution is done and our new model is ready. Let's now check our progress and check how good is it. Is it decent like the previous one, or is it better than it? By running this, it will tell us, and as you can see here, the result is good, 0.909, which is good. Now, since we created that model which tells us, now we need to create the model which gonna predict for us. And again, this one is the same as the one that we used in the previous video, so you can check it from there. All the commands and everything was explained already. So if you have any question, you could ask us. So let's run it, or specifically let's create the model. that predicts for us. I think is done. Checking our progress. Yes, we are done. And there are the results here, which they give us an information. And yeah, we are done here. If you have any question, feel free to ask us. And thank you for listening.